The world knew Helen Wills Moody as Miss Poker Face. Her lack of emotion, her extreme concentration, made her oblivious to everything but the game in hand. She was considered cold and proud. No one ever really knew the feeling she concealed. It was always that way, from her first American Championship final in 1923. Helen Wills, as she was then, is just 17. Her opponent is Mrs. Mallory, the defending champion. Mrs. Mallory, nearest the camera, has been American champion for the past 3 years. No one expects a 17-year-old to beat her. But Helen Wills plays like a veteran with no sign of nerves. And Mrs. Mallory's reign as America's tennis queen comes to an end.
There and then, the new champion acquires the nickname of Miss Poker Face. The next year, she comes to London to compete in the championships at Wimbledon, the mecca of all lawn tennis players. The kings of Spain and Portugal are there to see her reach the final. Her opponent on the far side is an English girl, Kitty McCain, who, after being on the verge of defeat, fights back to become one of the few women ever to beat Helen Wills. Kitty McCain wins by 2-1, but Helen Wills will be back to avenge that narrow defeat by Kitty McCain. And with me now is Kitty McCain, though of course she's now Mrs. L.A. Godfrey. Now, what about that 1924 final?
Well, what I remember most about it was the fact that I jolly nearly lost it. We hear a lot about power tennis nowadays, and I think that Helen was the first girl player to use what I call the power tennis. She hit the ball very hard indeed, and she served a cannonball service. And I think although perhaps people hit harder nowadays, she was a very, very hard hitter.
Did you ever talk to her much in the changing room?
No, I don't think so. The thing I remember most about her, before a match that she was due to play, you'd find her in the dressing room with her hands in a basin of cold water, standing quite oblivious to everything, apparently concentrating, I expect, on how she was going to play this match, and I imagine cooling down her temperament so that she could remain calm and cool and serene.
Do you really think that she merited the nickname of Miss Poker Face?
Yes, I do, on the court. I think it's because she concentrated so hard that she had no sign of any emotion at all when playing tennis. But off the court, if one had any conversation with her, she was a very charming, nice girl.
Now let's take a closer look at Helen Wills through the eyes of the slow-motion camera. Watch how hard she hits the ball, how she gets into position for the next stroke. These are the strokes which are to make her a champion of champions. For years, she monopolizes her national title. America is proud of Miss Poker Face. In 1925, she gains revenge by beating Kitty McCain at Forest Hills. She collects titles as others collect autographs. She beats them all, except the fabulous Suzanne Longlong.
In 1926 at Cannes, on the French Riviera, huge crowds come to watch the tennis match of the century. Helen Wills versus Suzanne Longlong. The great Suzanne, 6 times Wimbledon champion, already a legend. Suzanne Longlong moves like a ballet dancer about the court. Her amazingly accurate drives keep Helen Wills on the run. Miss Poker Face is outspeeded by an older but nimbler opponent. The great Suzanne proves more versatile than the American champion. The agile Frenchwoman never relaxes her grip on the match, and to the delight of the French crowd, she wins in 2 straight sets, 6-3, 7-5. They never meet again, for Suzanne Longlong causes a sensation by turning professional. Even today, tennis fans still argue as to whether Suzanne or Helen was the greater player. Well, you played both the greats, Helen Wills Moody and Suzanne Longlong. Now, who do you think was the greater player?
I think, just in my personal opinion, I think Suzanne was, because she had every part of the game completely at her fingertips. She volleyed just as well as she played her ground strokes. She was very accurate. She practically never made a mistake. In fact, she could almost hit a postage stamp on the court if you asked her to.
Well, now, you beat Helen Wills Moody. How many times did you beat Suzanne?
Well, I never beat her at all. I never found out how to beat her. And neither did Helen Wills if it came to that.
In 1929, Helen Wills plays another Englishwoman, Mrs. Holcroft Watson, in the American national final. By now, tennis fans are beginning to resent her poker face. They think her arrogant. Newspapers call her the killer of the courts. Helen Wills wins the match and her 6th American championship. But hurt by the crowd's changed attitude, she collects her trophy and goes sadly home to California.
That same year, the year tennis fans turn against her, is the year of her marriage. Until then, tennis had left no time for romance. But leaving the church, Mrs. Fred Moody is completely happy, even if outwardly unemotional. So Helen Wills becomes Helen Wills Moody. The newlyweds enjoy a seafaring honeymoon on a yacht sailing along the coast of California. And when it's over, they settle down in San Francisco. In her new home, Helen furnishes a studio and takes up painting, quickly winning a reputation as an artist. Painting becomes almost as important as tennis and provides a practical use for some of her tennis trophies. The next year, she comes back to England again. She's invited to Buckingham Palace. It's one of the highlights in her career, when the Queen of the Tennis Courts is formally presented at court.
That year, Helen Wills Moody reaches the Wimbledon final again. She's already completed a hat trick. Another Californian, Elizabeth Ryan, is the other finalist. Helen is at her peak. She hasn't lost a set for years, and Miss Ryan, experienced player though she is continually on the defensive. Mrs. Wills Moody plays her usual hard-hitting game from the baseline and plays it immaculately. Once again, Miss Pokerface sweeps her opponent off the courts. She beats Miss Ryan in 2 straight sets, 6-2, 6-2, to gain her 4th successive Wimbledon title.
For years, Helen Wills Moody seems invincible. In 1931, she's American champion again. 1932, Wimbledon champion. 1933, Wimbledon champion for the 6th time. But this year she gets a shock from Miss Dorothy Round, the first English girl to reach the final for 7 years.
Poker-faced as ever, there's no thought of defeat in the mind of Helen Wills Moody as she serves at this end. But Dorothy Round is a fighter too. She's quicker about the court than Helen, and although she loses the first set, Miss Round comes back strongly in the second. Helen Wills Moody is made to run more than she's done for years. Time and again, Dorothy Round retrieves the champion's strong drives, matching Helen's patience and concentration. Dorothy Round spots the one flaw in Queen Helen's game, her slowness in getting to the forecourt. And playing on that, the English girl wins the second set 8-6. It's the first set Helen Wills Moody has lost for 6 years. Now, it's Dorothy Round serving in the third set, which is going against her. Helen Wills Moody's hard-hitting and greater experience are beginning to tell. It's match point. Dorothy Round puts up a gallant fight, but it's the champion who's dictating the play. And Helen Wills Moody wins the third set 6-3. It's her 6th Wimbledon victory, equaling Suzanne Langlant's record. But Dorothy Round's turn is to come.
That same year, Miss Pokerface loses her first match for 6 years, when she retires with spinal trouble against Helen Jacobs. Back to San Francisco and into hospital goes Helen Wills Moody. It seems unlikely that she will ever play tennis again. It looks as if her long reign is over. But slowly her condition improves. After months, she's discharged from hospital. She goes swimming to strengthen her weakened back muscles. She takes long walks to harden her leg muscles. She won't give up. And at last, she's allowed to handle a racket. Slowly, she sets about regaining her former skill. In 1935, she enters for Wimbledon, but only decides to go at the very last minute. That night, she's on the train bound for New York. She catches the ship 4 minutes before it sails. But can she regain her form in time? At Wimbledon, Helen Wills Moody, although rusty after her long layoff, reaches the final. So does her toughest opponent, Helen Jacobs, who shocks the center court by playing in shorts. The stage is set for a great battle.
Helen Wills Moody at the far end starts with all her old power and wins the first set. But Helen Jacobs wins the second to level the match. In the final set, every point is bitterly contested. Throughout her career, Helen Jacobs has been thwarted by the greatness of Helen Wills Moody now at this end. They came from the same town. They went to the same school, even joined the same tennis club. Their rivalry is long-standing. Now, as Helen Wills Moody serves, it's match point to Helen Jacobs. But she loses the point and her chance of victory. Helen Wills Moody, although exhausted, forces her tired legs for one last powerful onslaught. She wins the next game to get the lead, and now she serves at match point. The return is out. Helen Wills Moody wins her 7th Wimbledon. Queen Helen is back again. And for once, the poker face gives way to the joy of achievement.
After this, Helen Wills Moody retires. But in 1938, she makes another comeback. The two Helens meet again in a Wimbledon final. Queen Helen is now 32.
Miss Pokerface serves as hard as ever. Helen Jacobs chops her returns, but Helen Wills Moody is supremely confident, and a twisted ankle handicaps Helen Jacobs. Helen Wills Moody wins the first set 6-4. Gallantly, Helen Jacobs decides to carry on despite her injured ankle, but she hasn't a chance. And from now on, Helen Wills Moody dominates the match.
And Helen Wills Moody wins the second set 6-love, showing unusual excitement at the end of the match. And well she might, for this is her 8th Wimbledon victory, an all-time record. So Helen Wills Moody, Miss Pokerface of the tennis court, goes back to America, back into permanent retirement. From that moment, she belongs to the immortals of tennis.